All right,
Excuse
welcome
me.
back to the Retention Edge podcast. I've got Jason Keith here from Social Fresh. Social Fresh is a digital marketing agency covering both, I guess, paid media, branding, social, kind of, all those things. But yeah, Jason, why don't you give everyone an introduction on yourself?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, Eric. Great to be here. Yeah, Social Fresh started as the original social media conference and consultancy, and today we focus on research, strategy, and paid media. And we're still producing our conference. Our 31st conference is happening in New York City, March 19th and 20th in 2026. So lots of planning, lots of client work, lots of ideation and brainstorming happening for both our event and our clients these days.
Awesome, awesome. And I guess what's your role in the business? What are you doing on kind of a day-to-day basis right now?
Yeah, I am the co-founder. I think my regular role, usually besides high-level planning, is strategy. Like we are mainly a strategist for a lot of our clients. Like we do execute paid media, but um, when we come in and do research, when we come in and run Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads or Google ads for someone or SEO, it always starts with strategy. And we have a couple people, me and my co-founder Nicole, are kind of our lead strategist, and we have a couple of contractors we work with, but that's our main filter and the main value we bring. And most of my work day to day is high level strategy work for marketing.
Awesome. And I guess can you walk us through your process that you kind of undergo when you're analyzing any brand or business that wants to work with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gap analysis usually, right? I mean, I think even even when you're marketing your own business, it always is helpful for someone to come in with an outside point of view, to see what you're missing, to see the opportunities you're missing or the trends that you're not aware of. For us, we take a research first approach. So we want to make sure we understand everything about our client's customer, about how they make money, or how about they accomplish their goals, as well as their competitors and kind of their industry, and any consumer trends that affect that. So we do research, we do a discovery phase, and then we come in and we identify the best places we can help. That's usually some type of content or social strategy. Sometimes it's a paid media strategy. Sometimes it's a big research report. We do a lot of market research, audience research. We did a big report for one of the most well-known software companies a couple months ago on how they can retain their B2B software customers better. And that's 3 months of deep research, interviews, focus groups, and then analysis to kind of bring insights to that client, which went really well. So they took that and they've already increased their retention with their customers from that data project.
So a lot of the people listening to this are obviously in and around the e-commerce space, whether they're in the businesses themselves or the businesses that are supplying those businesses. I guess from a customer retention standpoint, what should businesses be focusing on and looking at to kind of analyze and understand better how to retain their customers? What's that overall strategy that they should kind of undertake?
Well, I think the first thing is to talk to your customers to understand how they solve their problems. Like it's essentially, I think for e-commerce especially, the the more touch points you can have with someone, the more often. That's the number one way to kind of keep and retain good customers. I think it depends on your product. Like for software, that looks like confidence in your ability to use the product and your daily use of that product. The more often we can get you into the product and the more confident you are to use it, the more likely we are to retain that customer. For e-commerce, I think it can come in a lot of different forms. Confidence is important, but what are they confident? Are they confident in the look and feel of a product, the comfort of a product, if it's food and beverage, the health and safety of the product, um, finding out what those customer objections are, customer pain points, and kind of the triggers for purchase. That all happens through having real conversations or doing surveys of your audience, and then just beefing up those touch points as much as you can, over delivering on the pieces that cause them to come back more often. So I always like to think of it from the software point of view, but we have worked with tons of consumer clients, and I think that piece of understanding those pain points and triggers is something that feels like it could be a big research project. But honestly, if you just pick up the phone and talk to a few customers each month, that's a huge first step that could really reveal some of those insights. And if you're not going to hire someone to do that, just go into ChatGPT and be like, hey, I want to learn about what are the loyalty trigger points, what are the pain points in the customer journey for our e-commerce clients that will keep them coming back more often. And that's the confidence builder, is just over delivering on those points. The other thing I'll say is I think social media and content comes into that in a big way. And just being a more human brand where either your founder or your subject matter experts at your brand, partnering with creators or podcasts, these are things that are really uh, building trust and allowing more touch points more often with your potential customers. And I think that's a thing that I see under delivered on, both on software clients, finance clients, e-commerce clients. It's a weak point for most marketing teams these days because it's hard to do, but it's what the consumer wants to see more of.
You bring up a good point, which is most brands right now were constantly evolving with their social strategy, right? Trying to figure out how to get as much organic reach as possible, because obviously, the more you invest in paid, the more money you're spending, and obviously, customer acquisition costs on Facebook and Google really only go up to an extent. To an extent. Uh, what should brands be doing right now? What's working in the social space? And maybe we can even break this down by platform, right? Maybe break it up into Instagram versus YouTube versus TikTok. But what are the strategies that you're seeing are working right now and that are effective for these e-commerce brands that are looking to get more of that organic reach?
Yeah, I mean, I think influencer work is kind of becoming more affordable each day. For a lot of brands, it's more affordable than doing social ad spend. I think both are important, but I would be experimenting with influencer work. It takes kind of some expertise to do influencer work well. You could start trying to do it yourself. You could hire a freelancer. You could hire an agency. But at a minimum, one thing you can do is look for your customers, see which customers you have that are already creating content or already maybe kind of a creator influencer, and partnering with them. I think that's some low hanging fruit that a lot of brands I see doing, but maybe 60% of the industry is not really doing on a large scale. Um, Another thing that works really well is having some type of podcast or regular video show by your brand. That could look like a lot of different things in a lot of different platforms, but content that looks like a podcast, that looks like what we're doing, like if you have a microphone in front of
Mhm.
you on screen, actually outperforms. There's a little bit of authority building expertise assumption when you see someone talking in an interview style, or when you see them with a microphone, or you see multiple people on like a panel. You can do that by just doing an interview with people inside your brand once a month. You can actually launch a podcast. You could do an interview series, especially on TikTok, serialized content that is part one, part two, part three, or is a podcast series, or is, eight videos in a row on something you've planned out. Um, that's what they're elevating more and more. And you're always going to see reels and shorts kind of copying what TikTok does and kind of catching up a few months later or 6 to 12 months later. So I always recommend TikTok as a place to test. It's a place that's going to help you find your customers more quickly than the other platforms. Um, but all three are important. I mean, if you're producing vertical video, especially for younger customer mindsets, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they are going to search engines. We've done a lot of research reports in the last year that are, we did a report that's broadly on the consumer market in the U.S. For retail businesses, and what we found is that customers kind of 25 and younger are using social just as often as Google for search.
Hmm.
So they're intentionally looking for products and services on TikTok and on YouTube specifically. Those two, Reels and Instagram as well, but those two especially.
I've
And
noticed
then,
in my own like behavior, I will now jump into, like, TikTok and, like, search up a recipe as an example. Like, I'll be like, "Oh, how
yeah,
do I make, like, this great pad thai or something?" And then I'll see all the different videos and the content around it and then pick one of those videos to use as my recipe. Or, I'm going on vacation a little bit, so planning what I'm doing in Vietnam and Thailand and then going, "Okay, go to TikTok." What are people doing in Chiang Mai right now? What are people doing in Phuket or Bangkok? Like, what are the best things to do? And if I'm doing that as a 30-year-old, I can only imagine what those younger generations, especially, are doing with their own consumer behavior at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are pretty shocking. And it's not just social, it's AI as well. We see the same trend. Younger users are using AI for product and service recommendations, intentionally going to ChatGPT and other tools to search for products. But social, I haven't seen social come up to the level of Google until you start looking today at kind of the younger, kind of 25 and below ages. And that same shift is in AI. But I think, one thing that we've noticed is as the video platforms become search engines, um, it's becoming more important for you to have kind of citations and mentions on video. So if you don't have a way to do that on a regular basis, if you don't have a PR campaign, if you're not pitching to be on podcasts on a regular basis or have an agency doing that for you, if you don't have your own podcast, if you don't have your own video show of some sort, or you're not working with creators to regularly do kind of video reviews or recommendations or,
Hmm.
day in the life stuff of how they're using your product, then you're just missing out on this whole consumer trend that's getting really big of using these video channels as a source of what to buy, how to spend money, what products to trust. And I think to double down on that, what people really want to see is they want to see someone like them producing a video on a personal channel, as Jason's channel or Eric's channel, not Google or the Ramp or Oreo's channel. They want to see on a personal channel, kind of honest lo-fi recommendations, and that's anytime you can produce that kind of content on a regular basis, again through podcast creators, etc., a show of your own. I think that's it's a
Yeah.
big missing piece of marketing programs these days.
So if I'm selling like a health supplement, right? I don't want just one influencer that, woman in her 30s, as an example, that's going to be creating that content. I want a woman in her 30s and a man in his 20s and a man in his 30s. And, maybe based on race or based on ethnicity or, based on religion or, whatever those different, demographic details might be to like create that source of content where all these different people that you might be able to relate to are
Yeah, I mean,
essentially, yeah.
there is talent, whether it's your own talent, people in your organization, your company, or an expert you work with outside of the company. Expertise can travel very far, but I think that seeing yourself, whether age, race, gender, demographic, country, start with what you can do. If it's just one creator, two creators, start with that.
Mhm.
But you know, the more the more the person on the screen can identify with the person that's watching, the better.
And how do you see when people are discovering a brand through TikTok or even through LLMs or whatever, through social or AI, are you noticing them converting at a higher rate, uh, having a higher average order value? Like what are the effects of these people coming from there versus coming from a Meta ad or a Google ad?
Yeah, so I'd say uh, traffic, potential customers, prospects coming from creator content, coming from and even coming from AI search, both of those typically are higher converting. Like it varies by industry, it varies by product, obviously, but I find are typically higher converting. You can also test this in just your paid programs. If you're testing, a normal static ad versus an influencer ads, or a creator of some sort, UGC ad, typically those are going to perform better, right? If they know the person, if it's a famous person, they do even better. If the person looks like them, does even better, right? So it's all these layers of trust and awareness that you're building on top of. But I think it's how can you get in front of the camera more? How can you have partners, stakeholders, creators, people inside your team get in front of the camera more and learn that skill and just start testing? Because it's not about like getting the first influencer partnership you have right and you're going to have 50% higher conversion. It's about testing these things through advertising, testing these things through multiple partnerships, testing through your ability to stick with kind of producing video on a regular basis by your organization, and you'll start to learn and get better. And you'll find formats that perform really well. You'll find the more you test, the more things you test, you'll zero in on formats to just work really well for the consumer, to build trust more and to convert.
When when you're advising these companies on their branding strategy and social strategy and everything like that, how are you guys accounting for the fact that feeds aren't are algorithmic now to the extent where if I release a piece of content and it's serialized, or it's backed behind this history of my brand, and like me thinking that people might know about, have context in it. But most of the people viewing this content aren't going to have seen all these other pieces of content that led up to that, right? Like, how are you accounting for the way that people discover content now, where it's completely separate and not and they're only seeing a couple pieces of content out of that overall brand story, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's a few things that help there. So again, if it's a series and it's identified as a series, like part one, part two, or episode 30 or episode 31, right? Like those are triggers that will get people to your page watching more content, or expecting more content. And that is also a signal to the platform to surface that content more often. If you're publishing on a regular basis in a series, they will surface it more often to repeat viewers, which is helpful. I think another thing is formats that they expect. So looking at so like reviews do really well on TikTok, for instance. They do well on YouTube as well, but reviews are a good format for a lot of e-commerce. That can be your own review of your own product. It could be a creator, a customer. Um, the customer reviews that look organic, that feel organic, are going to do much better. But making that visually interesting, making it so it's a multiple part series, and making it so it's repeatable. So like it could be, once you work with a creator, once you work with, a customer that does good content for you, you think it works well, find a repeatable series of, they're calling out a different feature, they're doing an interview with you, they're, interviewing other customers. Find a way to make it a repeated process. That helps quite a bit. Um, Also starting in the middle. So this works two ways. One is starting a video where it actually feels like you're kind of in the middle of a sentence. So it piques curiosity. But also, if you're doing a video series, starting that series kind of not with an introduction or not with, a long explanation of what the series is going to look like, but just jumping into what you want to produce and then producing other content, kind of sprinkling in relevance about your company, about its history, about its founders, about how the product was created, about new products coming out. Having kind of a more narrative approach to storytelling across multiple videos really helps. But I think, creativity, visual nature, serialized content, and working with, customers and creators, all that helps kind of get people to your page to watch more content and follow and want to see more.
Es Well, especially with, like, TikTok and Instagram Reels and all these different things, the first, like, 1 or 2 seconds of the video are the most important, because that's when you deliver that, like, hook, right? And how do you guys balance the need to, be show trustworthiness and, like, kind of align with the brand, while at the same time creating content that hooks the viewer right away without being too clickbaity and all these different things? How are you guys uh, balancing that?
Yeah. I think one of the most successful things you can do that's a lower pressure kind of creative task, is instead of designing and writing like the perfect hook, is to, have an interview or review or podcast episode and literally look for the most interesting things that were said during that content. It could be a stat, it could be a very short like recommendation, it could be a weird part of a story, um, and start your videos with that anecdote. It could be 3 seconds, 5 seconds, and then that clip that you're previewing with will be later in the video, but you're kind of just catching them with that most interesting piece. That's something a lot of creators are doing now. I've been doing for several years on TikTok and works really well. And you're not like over promising something. It's literally like a movie trailer. It's a teaser to what's coming, and it gets people to stick around later into the video. I think that's much more successful than, focusing on writing 3 seconds of copy. Because typically what happens there is it kind of sounds fake, or it sounds like another hook you've heard before, which audience starts to turn off to. So I think keep it natural. If you don't pull a clip from the larger content piece as a preview, like I'm suggesting, then just introduce what you're doing very quickly with a value add mindset of,
Hmm.
here's my 3 tips about what I really think works for, cleaning your shoes, whatever is relevant. For keep it very short and have a visual hook along with your verbal hook, meaning show some type of edit in the video. So it could be you talking and then cutting to the shoe being cleaned or something like that. Like give people a visual reason to stick around as well as a verbal one.
Do you notice that in the content that you're releasing, um, essentially, essentially continually more and more optimizing for the shorter attention span. So more cuts in videos or more graphics showing up across the screen in any different ways. Like, are you noticing that's drastically changing, especially over the last year compared to like 2 or 3 years ago?
I think yes and no. I mean, there's certainly a level to that TikTok and other short form video platforms are quicker edits. You know, if it's a 30 to 60-second video, the tighter you can get the the actual value in that edit, the better. So that means a lot of short clips, um, all the dead air edited out. But you also see kind of the anti trend to that, which is TikTok, YouTube, Reels are all getting longer. All of those platforms are
Mhm.
asking for longer video. They want people to stick around longer because then they can show, more ads. They can keep people on the site longer. It takes a lot more effort to produce a quality longer video in many ways. It's a different skill set than a short video, but they have their own challenges. So I think that's important. The shorter your video, the more important that is. The more important it is to have, um, you know, captions on the screen that are easily readable, the more important it is to have a lot of visual cuts early in the clip, especially. But I think overall, you just want to make sure that no matter the length of the video, it is promising value and then delivering on that value consistently. If it's a 30 to 60-second ad or TikTok video, organic, that may only be one promise or two promises in delivering on those. If it's a
Mhm.
60-minute webinar, you're having to deliver maybe every couple minutes to every 5 minutes, right? So it's a visual promise, a verbal promise, and then delivering on that.
Switching topics a little bit, you were talking a little bit about AI traffic and showing up inside LLMs and how that traffic converts. One of the big issues that I'm seeing across a lot of our clients and who we're working with is that it's kind of like the market placification of their brand because a lot of them didn't go on to Amazon as an example because once you go on to Amazon you to a large extent kind of blend in with all the other products. And so if you're selling, premium leggings or something like that, without the ability to brand yourself on Amazon the way you can on your own site, you kind of lose the ability to really like charge that higher premium for that product and everything. And so what I'm seeing now is that, okay, you want to obviously optimize for LLMs because you want to be known as the best quality yoga pants out there, winter jacket, whatever it is. But if Arc'teryx is just showing up inside of an LLM without, beside maybe cheaper Amazon versions that have optimized for this or whatever it might be, they're losing a lot of that like esteem and that branding that would come. So how are your clients dealing with that right now, and how are they kind of balancing between the two and trying to uh, adjust for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two sides of that. Number one is kind of citations. Are you getting enough citations to show up more often? And citations come from a ton of places. So I think, if you have good search SEO work, that's going to help your citations. If you have good brand work, good PR work, that's helping. Podcast and videos, all of those transcripts, especially YouTube, even LinkedIn, Reddit, those mentions, all of those are citations that are very important. And citation is simply a mention of your brand or product. What doesn't have to have a link. Citations are more important for AI search. Links are more important for regular Google search and other search engines. Um, so making sure you're building that authority consistently is very important. On the other side, you know, brand becomes really important when all of a sudden these AI tools are shrinking the discovery and consideration phase into like 3 chat messages. When they're speeding up that customer journey so much, having heard of your brand before that becomes really important. And that's a huge challenge. The quality of your product, again, reviews and citations, those can help you show up, especially for really niche searches, um, which we can talk more about. But I think the big thing is making sure you're showing up more often and making sure that they've heard of you before they get into that chat. So that's advertising, that's brand campaigns, that's influencer marketing, social media marketing, but really focusing all of those marketing efforts on a smaller target audience because you can't advertise to everybody, you can't get your brand out in front of everybody. So really focusing on your highest return audience and showing up in front of them more often when you can.
We're out of time, Jason, but look, I really appreciate it, man. This has been great. I think there's a lot of really useful, very valuable information here. If people want to find you or show up to one of your guys' events, where can they find you at?
Yeah, well, our next conference is March 19th and 20th in New York City, Social Fresh 2026. If you go to socialfresh.com/2026, and you can use, we'll do a special code for listeners. If you use the code LOUD10 or LOUD10, you can get 10% off for Social Fresh. And you can always find me on LinkedIn, just search my name, or you can head over to my newsletter, morebadideas.com.